know the feeling of preparing yourself for something important. It may be the years in college you spent getting educated and trained as a professional. It may have been boot camp where you were taught new skills that you would need and stretched as a person to be ready for combat. It may be the weeks spent in classes to prepare to become a new parent, or hours spent in classes to become a volunteer. You are educated, you are tested and examined, and then the moment comes when you are on the first day of the thing that you have prepared to do. And before you step into this new situation, you have that weird feeling in your gut. What am I doing here? I'm not ready for this. I have no idea what I'm doing. And with those feelings in your gut, you take a step and begin something new. I felt that way when I walked into the first church to which I was appointed. I had my diplomas in hand, ordination papers in hand. I had behind me 3.5 years of seminary work done well, field experience done well, hospital chaplaincy accomplished. I was ready. I was really ready. Yet as I stood on the precipice of being the minister of my own congregation, I thought, oh my gosh, I'm not ready for this. I wanted to run. What if I didn't know the answer to a question? What if I made a mistake? What if I forgot the organism name, which in a lot of congregations is a mortal sin? What if? By the power of the Holy Spirit and the joy of the Holy Spirit, I stepped into the church that first day, and guess what? Everything was fine. I was prepared. I did make mistakes. I couldn't answer every question from time to time and had to go find the answer. And I absolutely remembered Charlotte's name. Too often we don't think that we're ready for something new, but we really are. We have been preparing for that something all our lives. It's not that we aren't ready, rather it's that we are afraid to take that leap of faith. The Apostle Peter knew about this kind of experience very personally. His first letter was a pastoral letter written to the house churches scattered across 5 Roman provinces. And in the first chapter of the first letter, we can glean 2 messages. One is that no matter how insecure you may feel, you are ready for ministry, and it's time to move into action. The second is about how to sustain ourselves in ministry, which can be difficult at times and can drain us if we don't continually fill ourselves with the holiness of God and claim our own holiness. So first, we need to be honest about our preparedness. So let's think about that for a few moments, about how really prepared we are for ministry and outreach. We have studied the Word in worship, in small groups, and on our own. We know that God has said to us from the beginning of time. We know that God is our salvation. God is our constant salvation. Not our own knowledge, not our own skill, it's not our own words, but God and God alone. So we have learned to put our hope in nothing but the grace of God in our lives. We know that we are all God's children. The divine wants the very best for us and constantly leads us to that very best. And even when we get off the path, God is there to put us back on. Peter says that when we go into a new situation, what he calls a foreign land, we do so reverently, with our faith and hope centered on God. We know how to do that. It isn't beyond us. We know how to live in holiness and how to treat others in holiness. Peter also says that we have been purified by genuine love. And that's a done deal. So when we go into ministry and outreach, love people constantly from our hearts. We have the knowledge, we have the skill set. We are ready to go. Then he adds a reminder for those of us who think that making mistakes is the end of the world. He quotes Isaiah and says that all of us will perish. Be assured of that. None of this is permanent. The only thing that is permanent is the good news, the gospel of Jesus Christ, which we go out to proclaim. So don't sweat small stuff, because it is the big stuff that rules. John Wesley and the early Methodists were particularly concerned about inviting people to experience God's grace and to grow in their knowledge and love of God through disciplined Christian living. They placed primary emphasis on Christian living, on putting faith and love into action. This emphasis on what Wesley referred to as practical divinity. And I love that. Practical divinity. And it really is the hallmark of our denomination. Then Peter also talks about this holiness that will sustain us in ministry with others. And this is really important. It's important because it will keep us from going wild and burning out. It will keep us from bitterness and grumpiness and judgment of others when we are doing God's work. Holiness was also a big part, a major part of John Wesley's teaching. We are holy because God is holy. It was the state of the believer proclaimed in the Old Testament and in the New Testament and in the Gospels. Holiness is not about being perfect, as in the sense of perfect actions and perfect words, or walking around with a kind of aura about us. Wesley, and I think Peter would have agreed, understood holiness in this theological sense of having to do with our maturity in character and in ever-increasing love for God. That is holiness. Holiness is something we grow in as we mature as Christians. Holiness is something Peter learned after years of following Jesus, after years of putting his foot in his mouth, after years of absolute ignorance. Peter learned holiness by trying to walk on water and sinking beneath the waves. He learned holiness through humility when Messiah washed his feet. He learned holiness when the risen Christ charged him to feed his sheep. It took Peter many years to live in holiness after false starts, dead ends, and much stumbling. But Peter matured and began practicing holiness, which is simply living the way that God has shown us to live. By allowing God into our hearts and minds and behaviors, we begin to love others constantly. We begin to see the face of God in the face of others. We thoughtfully prioritize our lives and really make important those things that will endure. And we begin to be holy people, just as God is holy. Holiness does not spend time and energy on those things that corrode life, but on the things that preserve life. Holiness recognizes that faith and hope are centered on God. And Peter realized that this process is a journey for those who accept Christ as their Savior. It takes time to become holy. And in that great hymn, Take Time to Be Holy, we learn that holiness requires prayer with God, discernment about what is important as well as what is not important, and letting Jesus be our God. Those are the things that sustain us in ministry and outreach. We know how to do those things. How to be focused on God and our work. We are prepared. So we are to own our faith and walk in it and be willing to show others what faith looks like. We are ready to go into the world and bring others to the amazing love of Jesus Christ. Christopher was nearing middle age. He was active in his church, participating in committees and study groups. Whenever he was asked to do something, he tried to do it. When disaster struck, he gave more in his offering. He gave extra on special days like on Poor Sunday and Peace with Justice Sunday. He adopted a family at Christmas. He taught Sunday school to 4th and 5th graders. These were all wonderful things and helped others greatly, but one day he realized that he had been practicing his faith very safely, not taking any risks, not moving out in the faith. He heard his minister speak about the need to do more outreach in the neighborhood, and he thought that was a great idea. He would certainly vote yes when it came up in administrative board. And sure enough, at the next board meeting, it did come up. And most of the hands in the room were raised in the affirmative. And after the vote, his minister stood up and said, "That is great. Now, who among you will go?" Most people stopped making eye contact with the minister at that point, and there was an uncomfortable silence. Christopher also sat in silence, thinking, I wouldn't know the first thing about starting that kind of outreach. I really don't have those kind of skills. People may ask me for help, but I don't know how to give it. The silence continued. And finally, Christopher decided, even though he was a little shaky, he was ready. And it was time for him to put his faith into action. He raised his hand and said, "I will take this leap in faith." Now who will help me? Slowly, more hands went up in the air. Christopher was about to do something new. He was prepared, but he was insecure about it. But he did it because he loved God and he loved others, and it was time to put his faith into motion beyond the church walls and trust in the abundance of God. He was ready, and it was time for action. Each one of us is prepared. We can do marvelous things. And so I invite you to adopt these words in your prayers and in your thoughts. I'm ready. It's time for action.